Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm Phyllis, and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is December the 2nd, 1980, and my home group is Croton on the Hudson in New York, not New York City, New York. Oh, it's such a pleasure to be with you today, and I want to thank the committee, too, for inviting me for this time to be with you. In my family, growing up, there was no indication of any alcoholics anywhere. I didn't know in my family that there was anything about alcoholism. There was, I later found out a great uncle in the past that was an alcoholic. He wasn't talked about because nobody ever talked about those people, that were in their past, that they didn't count today. So I was considered to be the black sheep in the family. Of course, I felt like the black sheep in the family very early. I was much like you in that I thought that, I was different, didn't fit in, but I was different in a way that I didn't feel really uncomfortable in the very beginning. I just thought, well, I'm one of those people that likes to be alone. And I lived on a farm growing up in Washington State, and I thought it was just kind of normal for, I lived out quite a ways from the city, so I thought it was normal to be alone. I didn't really realize that I really wanted to be a part of you until I was in junior high school, and then I got kind of the social bug and I tried to fit in. And when that happened, that's when I really started feeling different. But I like the other labels. I always use labels to help correct or justify my behavior, the way I was thinking. So I wasn't just different, I was special. I was unique. I was bright, I was cheerful, I was this, I was that. But anyway, nothing that would indicate that I was wrong, nothing was wrong with me, but I was just special. I like that word a lot, I was special. But I knew that inside me that something was terribly wrong, but I was very, very good at covering up. And this is a wonderful thing that we acknowledge when we're in AA, is that we realize it's the disease of denial. And there's so many ways that we use, that I used to cover it up without even knowing I was covering it up. That's denial. Not even understanding what I'm doing. I took my first drink on high school graduation. The reason I waited so long was because there was no alcoholism in my family. I didn't really associate with anybody that was drinking at that time because I was an overachiever. Not only was I unique, I had to be right, and I had to be the best, and I had to compete and, do everything perfectly. But that was a real conflict because I was also a people pleaser. So, I was so many things to so many people and could never, ever be right or never really feel good about myself inside. And I can't tell you that when I picked up that first drink, I felt better. I can tell you that I went into immediate blackout. I don't remember too much about that evening, except I thought that was the way that everybody did when they drank. You drink, you don't remember. And I drank a lot. And from that point was kind of a picture of how I would drink for years because, well, very short time actually, but for years, that I almost always went into a blackout, and I never got sick. Now, I kind of thought it was kind of great if some of my friends did get sick, and I thought, well, you'd feel better after you got sick and throw up, and I didn't. I just suffered, and so I had to find ways eventually to cure that suffering in the morning, and we all know what that is eventually. I said all the things that you say. I'm not going to take that morning drink. I'm not going to act that way. I will drink less. I will change what I drink. I will change when I drink. And none of that worked. None of those things worked. And we know that so well because, if you're like me, you drank like me, I tried everything and anything. I even tried relationships. One of them was... I got married in college, and it was a very short marriage, and I really don't like to count it because, it was so short, but I had a child, so it has to come, well, you don't have to be married, but anyway, I do like to know that she had a father that I can identify, so that was my first marriage, very, very short. After that time, my drinking increased because I didn't drink during that short time, but after a few years, I started drinking more, being on my own and trying to find a new relationship to fix my life, which was spiraling again, out of control. And I was dating at that time. I was living in Seattle, Washington, and had gotten a really great job there. And I thought I was on top of the world, and I was, a new, fresh start. But I was drinking more, so I needed protection. And so I was dating these 3 men, and just by accident, well, I don't know how that happened either, but, they were, you just say yes often enough, and it happens. But one was a private eye, and I don't even remember where I met him, probably a bar. And the other one was an FBI agent, and he was actually, I knew him growing up, and he had gone off in the world, gone to college, and was an FBI agent, and he was, there's a long story behind that, it's a whole other story. But anyway, so I was dating him, and then the other one, individual I was dating was a Seattle police detective. So I felt protected. But the private eye was just a real alcoholic. He was the one that really drank more than me. So I could always look at him and say, gosh, if I don't want to be like him, but yet I could drink all I wanted around him, but I don't really want to be like him. And the FBI agent did not want to drink that often. He thought I had a problem, but I never listened. The Seattle police detective drank kind of just right, so it sounds like the 3 Bears. So he's the one I married next. There's a story behind that too, but that's not enough time. So we got married, and the one condition that he had was he said, The lip readers can't see your lips. Oh, that's okay. Thank you. And so we got married, and he said, I don't really want you to work. He said, I want you to stay at home and be a mother and a wife. And I thought, well, that's good. That's what, because I was thinking that might be a real opening for me to change my life too. But he was still drinking off and on, and that wasn't good, and I was drinking more. It was more time to drink, and that's when I really learned about the morning drink, and that it was really, it was one of necessity. And it just got to the point where I became a daily drinker. I didn't like my life. It was miserable. It was one of those alcoholic marriages that some of us have experienced, that they're nightmares. And I don't need to say anything more about it. It was not a marriage made in heaven. It was a convenience marriage, and it was just a terrible, terrible time in my life. And so one day I just kind of packed up and I said, the first time that I ever admitted to myself for one brief second that I might be drinking too much, just that one moment of clarity. And we were living in this terrible middle of the state thing, and I forgot this part of it because he had actually gotten injured as a police detective, and so he took a disability of leave on that particular job, and we went to the middle of Washington State, which is very remote and nobody knows where it is. I never even knew it existed. And so the only thing there was a church and a bar, and I didn't go to church too often at all. So he got another job, and the job was a state liquor inspector. And it was perfect because, and I'm backing up here from the time that I left, but he used to bring home all the liquor that was for the bars. For instance, they had a fire, if they had, any turnover, whatever, that they were some way they didn't qualify, or that they were getting ticketed and didn't obey, or they had a citation. He took the liquor, and he was supposed to dispose of it. And we both know, we all know that he didn't dispose of it that way. But we had this wonderful little shed. We had an apple orchard. Now imagine two alcoholics trying to manage an apple orchard. Yes, eventually they died. But we had this old shed in the middle of this orchard what used to be an old chicken house. And it had been abandoned a long time ago, and that's where my liquor cabinet was. And that's where all the bottles were, and that's where I learned that, of course, I never drank for taste, I always drank for effect. But that's where I learned there was no discrimination between any type of liquor or alcohol at all, because there were things like lime vodka and all of these awful flavored things that, I would drink anything. And so I had the key because he was working, and so somebody had to take care of it. And we had no company, no friends at that time, although I always said, that we needed to make sure we had that large supply for everybody. But needless to say, before I left and had that moment of clarity, I don't think there was one bottle left in that particular area of the farm. But when I realized that I had been drinking too much and I couldn't stop, that was my moment. I just couldn't stop. And my life was just, again, spiraling. And I was starting to really not like myself. I was hating myself, actually. I just wanted to change. And I don't know if I particularly wanted to stop drinking forever, because I didn't know what that meant, but I just wanted to change. And I knew what I had to do, and it was my husband that I had to say goodbye to, because he was causing me to drink. And we all know there's truth to that. So I picked up and I moved back to Seattle, and I got a job amazingly, immediately. And they just didn't know who they were hiring. And just look at resumes. And then that lasted for about 6 months with my drinking. And what I did was I just simply changed my hours of drinking. I didn't change my alcoholism at all, it was worse. Because I would call in the morning. I was one of those employees that when I showed up, I would work myself into the ground. But I just didn't show up much. So my boss, he took me aside one day, excuse me, and he suggested that I might be drinking too much and that I might want to take a look at Alcoholics Anonymous. I couldn't believe my ears. I thought, he's really, where does he get this idea, what Alcoholics Anonymous I had not ever thought about. That being a possibility or even a part of my life. But I didn't forget what he talked to me about. And it was just a short time after that I was in a bar, which I seldom frequent in those days because I was too afraid because of the way I drank. I drank at home, and I just didn't go out. But I went to a bar that night, and I called Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was in a blackout when I did it, so I don't remember too much about it, but I do remember two things. I remember when I got on the phone and I called, and nobody was there to talk to me. They said everybody was in meetings. Now I know I'm wrong, but that's what I heard, that everybody was in meetings, and if they could just get my number, they'd call me back. So I gave them the number at the bar, and I went back and I was drinking. And they did call back. And they asked, if they said, well, this is who they were. And so the bartender said, is a Phyllis in the room? And I said, yes, and that was me. And they said, well, Alcoholics Anonymous is on the phone for you. I remember that. And I thought, well, that's what they do, that's not a bad idea, but no, that's what they do. And so I didn't go, nobody came, of course, to get me, and but she did tell me to go to get a cab and go home. And I thought, I can't imagine getting a cab. I got a car, and how's the car going to get home? Didn't make sense to me. So I got in the car and went home, and that was the beginning of the next day talking to a woman that, for the first time in my life, I heard the message of Alcoholics Anonymous and recovery. Amazing, amazing. For somebody that didn't have a clue about who we were and what we were about, and there was an answer, there was a solution. Now, I'd been drinking by that time for a period of about 7 to 8 years, and I had slid down that slope so far, I didn't think I could go any further. And I went to meetings for about 3 months, and I did. I thought, boy, did I get well quick. I got well so quick, I forgot everything that I had been. Everything. And I remember hearing in one meeting, if you haven't had your last drunk yet, or if you can't remember your last drink, you haven't had it, or something like that. So I thought, well, I better go out. I mean, I'm so boring. I am a housewife, drinker, and in the house. I'm just, I don't have a story. I mean, so I will make it to where it's so impactful on me that I will never want to drink again. So I went out to search for this one last drunk that was going to be memorable and keep me sober for the rest of my life. And again, as you all know, that it was the same as it had been before. I went out and I drank and I got drunk, and it was the same. There was nothing extraordinary about it. I don't remember it. But it did lead me into another period of drinking. And when I got back to AA not too long after that, it's been said by other people throughout the weekend, and I experienced it firsthand, that I knew that there was a solution. I'd heard it, and yet AA didn't fit for me right then. I had not reached my bottom. So it took 3 years for me in and out of AA. And I was one of those that I would come into the meetings drunk quite often, and I would ask you, why can't I get it? What is it? Why can't I get it? Why me? I thought I was one of those that was really totally incapable of being honest, to be able to get the program, or that I was mentally ill, which almost I would have preferred to be mentally ill sometimes than an alcoholic. I began to have such self-hatred of myself that thinking, there's just nothing that I can do. I cannot get sober, I cannot stay sober, and I can't stand drinking. But I continue to drink off and on. I was able to gather up like 3 months, then I'd come back. I was one of those that would come into meetings and you'd just kind of look at me and you'd think, she's never going to make it. And some people actually turned their backs. But I'll tell you what, there were some that didn't. Some of you stayed, and you stayed with me. And, and I did geographics during that time too. Trying everywhere, every place, to find an answer. And that, I can't tell you how important that is in Alcoholics Anonymous, to keep those doors open for people like me. And there's many of us, I know people that come in the first time and they say, they're through drinking. I was not through drinking. I just wasn't through drinking. And during that time, I lost everything. And, all the material things that I lost, it didn't keep me sober. I lost my daughter as far as, the guardianship, and everything was taken away, all rights. That didn't keep me sober. In fact, it made me drink more. Because there was no reason why that should have happened in my mind. I turned out to not be a very nice drunk. I was one of those that, I was so angry with myself, it came out when I drank. And I took it out of my car a lot. And I just, I'd go in and when you're drinking, you can't really find locks and stuff, and you can't really maneuver a lot. And I would kick my car, and I would, and I would bang on it, and try to, I'm afraid to say that whenever I'd get in anyone's car, let alone my own, I would start trying to destroy the car. Now, I don't know why. Maybe confined space, maybe I wasn't going where I was thinking I was going or whatever. But I know one time, the police were called and they arrested me, and I thought I was going to detox. And in fact, I'd asked them to take me to detox. And I thought that's where we were going until I started ripping up their car. And I didn't go to detox. And I guess that I kind of ripped out their headliner and their screen and destroyed that. And so I went in cuffs. And I was taken to this little room that some of us know, that's rubber. I call it rubber. It was padded and in a nice little jacket that you can wear in the back and cross your arms. And that's where I stayed, for a while. And when I got out, I was sent to court, and of course I was probation for a year. And they said, Alcoholics Anonymous is your answer. Now, why did the judge know that? Because it's CPC work. Thank you. Thank you, AA, for your services. I also asked to go to the Washington State Mental Institution. I was examined. That woman told me, the head of the institution said, your answer is Alcoholics Anonymous. Someone was guiding me throughout all of this. I could have so easily been there, so easily been locked up forever. I knew what my future looked like. Were I to continue drinking, it did not change. It didn't change until I took that last drink, and I had lost, inside, absolutely lost every bit of me, every bit of my way and myself was gone. I had no more answers. I had no more solutions. And believe me, I tried everything. To fix it. And I couldn't fix myself. And that's when I was ready to listen. When I was really ready to get a sponsor that I used. I had sponsors before. But I want to tell you, after my last drink, which was December the 2nd, 1980, that I heard so many things along the way that kept me coming back. So that's why I say again, there's nothing that we say at any particular time. We don't know what that magic word is, or that one thing that will keep us to come back, so we have that chance of sobriety. That chance of sobriety to change our lives and to live a useful life. So when I came in, of course, I got really busy. I got this sponsor that was absolutely on fire with service. Now, most of my journey in sobriety is service. But it wasn't service right away. What it was steps. I needed to work the program. And boy, I'll tell you, she took me through the big book, and I had a home group that was a 12-step study, and we had one night of the 12 steps, and the other night was the big book. And I would go to meetings all the time. I lived in meetings. because that's where I belonged. I drank every day, so I went to meetings every day. I didn't have a job, so where else was I going to go, right? My sponsor was, she was an absolute, she had to have the patience of Job, and she was my lifesaver at that time. Her and my home group, and all the people that I, in AA that I met and were close to me, and we get this fellowship and this wonderful, this sense of just great belonging and love, and it held me together. And I began to find a higher power. Now, that was tough for me, and all along those times I was struggling. It was tough because I was so filled with self and answers. But now I was ready to listen and turn it over and practice prayers in the morning and practice meditation. But I was also needed to be active because I was one too that I thought of myself so much, and I was so entangled with myself because it was poor me. I was really fulfilled. Once I got sober, then I realized all the things that I had done and all the things I had lost. And most of them were inside me, but I needed to stay busy and stay active in order to continue to get to be sober. So thank goodness for service, because it brought me right along. And I thought of others. I was able to reach out my hand, and I remember telling my sponsor, I said, how can I possibly greet at the door? That was my first job. And she said, well, you're sober a few more days than the next person coming in, so that's a job for you. And oh, I didn't want you to hug me. I didn't, and I didn't feel worthy, really, to be there. But I had to do those things in order to grow. And I did them. I did just what you said, and it worked. It worked. I was coffee maker. And boy, I'll tell you, there's not a tougher job in AA, because you're so picky about your coffee. But I learned. And then I became secretary of the home group, and that was really a lot of fun, because then I got my own way about setting up the chairs and the table arrangements. And let me tell you, we all have our own little design, don't we? And we get a year to do it, or 6 months, or whatever, and then we get to rotate out. Rotation, what a wonderful, wonderful thing for AA to have. So we all get an opportunity, and yet we don't become so seated and so set in our ways that we think that we have answers. Because we don't as individuals, but we do as a group. We do as a group conscience. So I learned all these things just by doing, This is a program of action. And it's a wonderful program of action. I could never have stayed sober without being active and doing these things for AA. I learned a whole new area of AA that I would never have known before, because when I sat in meetings, after a while then, I probably would have said, as I've heard many say, is this all there is? No, there's so much more. So much more. And of course, the more that I found out, the more that I wanted to know all about AA and the fellowship of AA. There's so much to talk about, as far as the steps and what I went through, but I do want to say that step 4 and 5 were not difficult for me, but they were not life-changing for me right away. The one that really worked for me the very best was when I made amends. And the reason for that is because I held such a huge resentment towards my ex-husband and some of the other people in my life, but mainly my ex-husband for taking my daughter. And I just held on to that until I was able to make amends to him. So that was such a critical step. All steps are important. Every single step that I worked was important. And skipping one would have never gotten me sober. And it's, again, like everybody knows, you know, you repeat, repeat, repeat. You know, working with others is how we repeat and how we stay fresh and alive. As I mentioned, you know, we were, my third marriage. When I came into AA, I didn't want to have anything to do, you know, with, by that time, of course, I was single, and I didn't want to have anything to do with another relationship. Last thing on my list. However, after, you know, it was actually before I was sober, the last time, and I came in and I was in this home group, which I called my home group because the secretary of the group, who was leading the group at the time, was this quite attractive, tall man that I knew he was in service. My other people around there had said, you know, really it's important to be active, you know, and do these things. And I thought, well, I know he's serious about his sobriety. And yet, and then in the next breath, I thought, but I can't be attracted to him because I'm new in sobriety. I can't, you know, do that well. And my sponsor said, no, you cannot. You don't want to date. You can't date. Just wait for a year. He had a year at that time. And we would go places to meetings. That was our dating time. And so we weren't officially dating, but we were going together to meetings and then coffee afterwards. And, you know, you could still justify during that time. So we would, and eventually, that was, like I said, before I got sober completely. Well, I was kicked out of the halfway house. That's a whole other story, too. It's hard to get kicked out of the halfway house. But that was before my last drink, as I mentioned, and I had actually kicked the window out of their detox car, and they didn't like it. So they didn't like the way I drank, which is odd because why would you be in that situation in a halfway house? But anyway, I was asked to leave, so I didn't have any place to go. So he opened up his house and said, you can stay here as long as you want. I know it sounds suspicious, but it it was hard. I know, I talked myself in a corner, didn't I? Anyway, so I moved in. And then in about, I guess it was probably about 6 months or so, he said, well, you know, you can stay as long as you like, because I think I was ready to move. And I said, well, if we stay together, we have to be married or just separate, because I'm not going to live here anymore. Because all of a sudden I'd reached sainthood, I guess. And so he said, you know, we didn't arrange, we agreed to get married, okay? And I said, okay, I need to do a fifth step first. So I did. And we got married, and then I had my last drink 3 months after that. So as he said, I was a handful the first year.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
And I was. I mean, he said, could never believe that anybody, he said, I never would have guessed you drank like that. And I said, maybe you needed to see that, I don't know. But it was all because of my daughter. At that point, I was trying so hard to get my daughter back in my home, and it was, everything that I was trying was not working. And that and the resentment that I held against my ex-husband. So that was my last drink, and that was my third marriage and my last marriage. Aren't you glad? And he, of course, you know, stayed sober in AA, and so we were active in service together all this time, and always, you know, we're going places, doing things, and that's a joy, I think, of being active in AA, and having a great fellowship around us. that we can just build our lives inside the fellowship and yet learn to live outside of that in the whole world and be a productive person. AA doesn't say, this is where you live all the time. It's really how to live and take your life out into the world, and which I certainly did. I could not imagine my professional life being what it was and is today without the fellowship and without sobriety. And all the tools of the traditions and concepts teaching me all the principles that I applied in my daily life at work. And I think that we can all say that, and whatever we do, whatever walk of life that we have, is that they're just interchangeable. They are a way that we live today through our principles. I was active in my district and in my area. I served my area, as many of you have, and because home group is very important to begin and end and in between, but I did serve in the area, and I served as Panel 47 delegate for Western Washington area, and came back to the General Service Conference and served during that time. It was an exciting time because that was where we really confirmed the 164 pages, and we're right in the midst of the 4th edition of the Big Book. So exciting time to hear that full group conscience of AA speak again. And that's what's so beautiful about our conference, is that it's a reflection of all of you and your voice. What would we do without our group conscience? Nobody dictates or tells anybody what to do. They try, but we know it doesn't work. It was several years after I'd rotated, and I stood and was available for the Pacific Region trustee, and was amazed when I got the phone call that said that I was elected at the General Service Conference. And so I served 4 years as Pacific Region trustee, and again was so that wonderful opportunity to be a part of another group conscience, and formed, in different levels and different ways, but we just all bring together such richness in the way that we want AA to be guaranteed for the future. It's AA's legacy for the future. We all are responsible. And then to have this opportunity to be serving as your general manager now is just beyond belief. It is so incredibly wonderful. I have been at the General Service Office since January of 1979. This is almost the end of my 2nd year. And I can now say that I feel like I'm not a newbie anymore, but I'm certainly learning every day. It's like we do in sobriety. We learn every day. And I have wonderful people to work with. There couldn't be any better people than your General Service Office, the folks that work there. And I treasure each and every one of them. I think my job is as manager, and to be at that office as much as possible, and to really hope to lead, in that office, and encourage others to be leaders, and others to do their best, and to have the best working environment possible, and to know why they're there and their purpose, and to encourage them and support them in that purpose to do the best they can. And that is really what my mission is today. And in that, I want to tell you that the GSO is so, the light shines globally in AA. We are, in 180 countries around the world. It's just amazing how the message is carried and how we can help assist that. There's so many of you that travel worldwide and really have an impact on folks around the world, and you are sometimes the beginning of AA in those worlds. We translate books that go into other countries. We help to facilitate and share services. The way that we do it will help other countries, to be better at carrying the message within those countries. And it's wonderful to hear how they've adapted some of the ways that we do in our service structure and adapted them to their culture, their language, and it works for them. It works for everybody, no matter what religion, no matter what ethnicity. It's just an absolutely miraculous program that it does that. You know, what wisdom and what guidance we had from a higher power in the very beginning. You know, the breath that it can take. I want to tell you that, you know, at one point in my drinking that I had no relationships whatsoever. I'd broken all my relationships. My family didn't talk to me. They pushed me aside. I don't blame them for that. They didn't know. They couldn't help. All of those relationships were repaired. And with my daughter, you know, it's repaired. So repaired. You know, I'm so blessed with her. She now has 2 years of sobriety in this program. And it's because of you, not me. Because you were there for her. Now, we went through years, about 3-4 years of just desperate drinking with her, not knowing where she was, when she was, how she was. And you as parents have experienced similar things. There's nothing worse for a parent to know that. And know there's an answer and a solution, but you can't help. But your friends in AA can help. But she's doing so well now. And I mean, it just, beyond belief about how, you know, how blessed I am with that. And Terry's still in my life. He should be here. Some of you may meet him. And, you know, the rest of my family, now many of them are passed on, but I was able to repair those, make amends and repair relationships before they did. All of this because of the program of recovery that we have given to all of us so freely. And it's my responsibility to keep passing it on. And I believe that each one of us in AA has a job to do in AA. You know, you may not think, well, this is not for me in this particular area of service in any area, but yet it is. And sponsorship is one of the greatest services. You know, committee work, and there's so many things that we can do. There's a job for every one of us at a time in our sobriety. And that's the greatest thing, because we never know when that's going to happen or how it's going to happen, but all we know is we can be available. We can be available to be of service and give back to AA. And the gifts that we get in return are beyond our wildest dreams. I thank you so much for listening and for being a part of my sobriety.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.